Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome all hadith disciples and YouTubers to another episode or installment of 5 Minutes of fai'dah. What we want to talk about today is a verse in the 9th chapter of the Quran, Surah Tawbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha wa kunu ma'as sadiqin. Allah tells us what is translated to mean, O you who believe, fear Allah and be with the truthful. In this noble verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding His believing slaves, those who have accepted Islam, those who profess Iman, to do two things. Not three things, not four things. He says, but to do two things. And the first of those two things, He says, ittaqullah. He says, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second of those two things, Allah the Mighty and the Majestic, He says, وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ, and be with the truthful. Be with those individuals who have a sidq. Now, we only have 5 minutes, but we want to break down this verse, its importance, and the practical benefit that you're going to get from it on a daily basis as a Muslim. First and foremost, Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina aman. O you who have Iman. We have verses in the Quran al-Kareem in which Allah the Mighty and the Majestic addresses mankind. We have other verses in which He subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet. Sometimes Allah the Mighty and the Majestic addresses the Messenger. Many times He addresses Bani Israel, the children of Israel, and so on and so forth. But in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses Ahlul Iman, the people who believe in Allah with their hearts, who profess and declare His oneness with their tongues, and those who perform righteous deeds with their limbs, those who are al-mu'minun. And whenever the word mu'min, believer, or mu'mina, female believer, or alladhina amanu, those who believe, is mentioned, then it includes all of the three levels. It includes the Muslim, the mu'min, and the muhsin. But if Iman is mentioned separately, and Islam is mentioned separately, then there are two different levels. But whenever one is mentioned, then it becomes interchangeable. So this address is specific to the Muslims, specific to the believers. And as Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said, who's from the most knowledgeable of the companions, he says, whenever you hear Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu fa'ala samak, he says, then lend your ear, pay attention, listen attentively, because it's something important you're going to hear. Ibn Mas'ud, he says, F.M.F, he says it's either some good that you're being commanded with, or it's some evil that Allah is warning you from. So a special address to those who believe. To do what? Allah says, ittaqullah, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, do what you are required to do, of believing and of physical implementation. Whether it's a command to perform and comply to, or whether it's a prohibition to avoid and abstain from. And these are the three components of at-taqwa. At-tasdiqu bil-akhbar, wa-imtithal al-awamir, wa-ijtinab al-nawahi. Three components, three tiers of taqwa. The first piece is tasdiq, is to believe and to accept the information that Allah tells you of in the Quran al-Kareem and the authentic sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Number two is to comply to the commandments. Allah says lower your gaze, Allah says fight in His cause, Allah says spin in His cause, you have to do that. And thirdly is to avoid the prohibitions. Allah says do not drink intoxicants. Allah says do not mistreat the believing slaves. Allah tells us so on and so forth, so we have to do those things. So that's the first thing, is the command to have His taqwa. And secondly, Allah says, وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ, and be with the truthful. Be with individuals who are honest, who are upright, who, as we say, they're real people, they're not fake. Allah Azza wa Jal, He didn't specify what type of truthfulness. Truthfulness with the tongue, truthfulness inside, truthfulness with Allah, with the people. He says, as-sadiqeen, truthful people. In other words, those who have a thorough amount of truthfulness. First and foremost, they're honest with Allah, the one who knows everything, but they're still honest with Him. Secondly, they're honest with themselves. They're not fake, they're not liars. And those who are honest with mankind, they don't cheat, they don't deceive, they don't steal. This verse was sent down in Surah Tawbah as a command for the believers to avoid the hypocrites, to avoid the munafiqeen. Those people from the most ugly of their traits and their foul characteristics was al-kadhib, lying. They were not honest, they were not truthful. So therefore, belief, iman, and truthfulness goes like white on rice, as they say. And nifaq, hypocrisy, and truthfulness is like water and oil. They don't mix. So from the signs of a liar and from the signs of munafiq they go hand in hand. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us of the muttaqeen and make us of the sadiqeen. Ameen. Till the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.